The Banana Island skyline glowed in the warm afternoon sun, the lagoon shimmering as yachts drifted lazily in the distance. Aurora Carter stepped into her new penthouse kitchen, setting the last of the moving boxes on the sleek marble counter. She exhaled slowly, letting the quiet hum of the air conditioning soothe her nerves. It had taken her 4 years to get here. 4 years of building her boutique interior design firm, working long nights, and saving meticulously to afford this dream home. The floor-to-ceiling windows framed a view of the water so pristine it could have been a painting. This wasn't just a home. It was proof she had survived. On the balcony, her 3-year-old daughter, Isla, was kneeling by the glass railing, a small pile of crayons beside her. The hem of her sky-blue dress fluttered in the breeze, her curls catching the sunlight like spun gold. Aurora's heart tightened at the sight. Isla was everything, her reason for moving forward when it had felt impossible. The intercom buzzed. "Ma'am," the concierge's polished voice said, "your grocery delivery is here." Aurora slipped on her sandals and took the lift down to the private lobby on her floor. The marble-floored corridor smelled faintly of jasmine and new paint, another reminder of how fresh this development was. She stepped out into the shared landing between the two penthouses and froze. At the opposite door, a man stood with his back to her, speaking to the building staff. Even from behind, she recognized him instantly. The tall, broad frame, the way he stood with one hand in his pocket, shoulders relaxed but exuding that unmistakable air of control. Liam Knight, her ex-husband. Her breath caught. It felt like the floor had shifted beneath her. She gripped the strap of her handbag, willing herself to remain perfectly still. He was facing the concierge, his deep voice low and authoritative. She hadn't heard that voice in years, but her body remembered it too well, how it could soothe or slice depending on his mood. She stepped back slightly, pressing herself into the shadowed curve of the wall, praying the staff would finish quickly. He didn't see her. A moment later, Liam accepted a slim envelope from the concierge, then disappeared into his penthouse. Penthouse 4A. Her heart pounded. She stood there for a full 10 seconds, staring at the door that separated them, the same door she'd never imagined living beside. The concierge turned to her with a polite smile. "Your delivery, ma'am." She forced a polite nod and wheeled the bags into her penthouse. The moment the door clicked shut behind her, she leaned against it, her pulse still racing. Of all the places in Lagos, of all the buildings in Banana Island, Liam had to be here. She set the groceries on the counter and sank into one of the white leather stools, her mind spinning. The urge to pack everything up and leave was overwhelming. But leaving wasn't an option. She had just bought this place outright and furnished it down to the smallest detail. She had pledged money, time, and effort into making this their forever home. And Ayla. Her gaze shifted to the balcony, where her daughter was now drawing suns and flowers in a sketch pad. Isla had never met Liam. He didn't know she existed. Aurora's mind flashed back to that day, 4 years ago, when she had walked out of his mansion for the last time, a suitcase in hand and a storm in her chest. She'd been 1 month pregnant, but she hadn't told him. Not after the way he'd ended their marriage, cold, abrupt, as if everything they'd shared had meant nothing. He had been more concerned about finalizing the divorce quickly than asking if she was okay, than wondering if there was more to the story, than caring. She had sworn then that he would never know about the child. And now, he lived right next door. Her stomach twisted. She knew Liam, his persistence, his ability to get under her skin without even trying. If he saw Isla, questions would follow, and Aurora wasn't ready for those questions. She wasn't ready to let him close enough to shatter the life she'd built. She took a deep breath and made herself a silent promise. She would keep her distance. She would keep Isla away from him. No casual encounters in the lobby, no friendly neighborly chats, no reasons for him to knock on her door. If she was careful, they could live here without ever truly crossing paths. Isla came bounding in from the balcony, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mommy, look at my picture," she said, holding up a crayon drawing of a bright yellow sun above a blue sea. Aurora smiled, brushing a curl from her daughter's face. It's beautiful, sweetheart, Isla grinned. Can we go to the garden later? Aurora hesitated. The building's shared garden was stunning. Landscape paths, koi ponds, and shaded seating areas. But she now knew it was also a place where she could run into Liam. Maybe another day, she said gently. Isla tilted her head. Why not today? Aurora forced a light laugh. We still have to unpack, remember? But inside, she wasn't thinking about unpacking. She was thinking about doors and walls, about proximity and risk, about the man who lived just meters away and didn't know he had a daughter drawing flowers on the balcony. She unpacked the groceries with methodical precision, letting the repetition calm her nerves. For now, the plan was simple: stay invisible. But in a city as vibrant and interconnected as Lagos, she had no idea how long that would last. Aurora woke to the sound of waves lapping gently against the lagoon's edge. Even here in the heart of Lagos's most exclusive island, the water's rhythm carried through the glass. For a moment, lying in the stillness of her new bedroom, she almost convinced herself that everything was normal, that her new neighbor wasn't Liam Knight, that the past wasn't only a few feet away. She padded into the living room to find Isla already up, curled on the sofa with a storybook. Aurora's heart softened. For her daughter's sake, she had to hold firm to the plan. No interactions, no accidents, no openings for Liam to learn the truth. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Aurora hesitated before peering through the peephole. The concierge stood outside with a slim folder. She opened the door a crack. "Good morning, ma'am," he said warmly. "Here are the updated building guidelines and the invitation to the Residents Association meeting next week." Aurora accepted them, murmuring thanks. She was just about to close the door when she heard another voice, a deep, familiar timbre coming from behind her neighbor's door. Her muscles tensed instantly. She glanced sideways just in time to see Liam stepping out, speaking on his phone, his voice even and authoritative. "Yes, I saw the lobby design at the Azure building last week. Find out who handled it. Their style is exactly what we need for the Palmetto expansion." Aurora's pulse jumped. She knew the Azure building. She had designed its lobby last year: polished marble, warm wood accents, and a chandelier installation that had landed her in an architectural magazine spread. Liam continued, oblivious. "Tell them I want the same attention to detail. If they can pull off that level of work, they're perfect for this." He paused to listen, then nodded. "Good. Reach out today. We're finalizing contractors this week." Aurora kept her head down, pretending to flip through the folder, but her mind was reeling. He had no idea. He didn't know that the company he was praising was hers. When Liam disappeared into the lift, she slipped back inside her apartment, shutting the door quietly behind her. She leaned against it, a rush of conflicting emotions swirling. Pride that he admired her work, irritation that he might soon be involved in her business, and the unshakable reminder that nothing about him ever came without complications. By midday, she was in her home office, arranging swatches for another client, when her phone rang. "This is Samuel from the Knight Group," a crisp voice announced. Aurora's stomach dropped. "We're interested in hiring Aurora Luxe Interiors for a major project," Samuel continued. "Our CEO, Mr. Knight, was impressed by your work at the Azure building and believes your style is exactly what the new Palmetto Hotel wing needs." Aurora forced her voice to stay steady. "I see. And you'd like to arrange a meeting?" "Yes. Mr. Knight has approved an initial consultation this week." She stared at the city skyline through the glass, weighing her options. Walking away from a contract like this would be foolish, financially and professionally. But taking it would bring her dangerously close to Liam, and she had spent years building walls to keep him out. "I'll check my schedule and get back to you," she said at last. After she ended the call, she sat back in her chair. He didn't know it was her. Not yet, which meant she still had the power to decide how and when their paths crossed, if at all. But a creeping awareness settled over her like the weight of the humid air outside. In Lagos, even the strongest walls had cracks, and Liam had always known how to find them. The late afternoon sun washed the penthouse gardens in a warm golden glow. turning the manicured hedges and koi pond into something out of a luxury travel magazine. It was one of the few places in the building where Aurora felt Hila could play freely. At least she used to feel that way before discovering who lived next door. But Hila had been restless all day, darting between her coloring books and her toy kitchen set, and Aurora knew she needed to stretch her legs. Against her better judgment, she decided on a quick visit to the garden. "Only for 30 minutes, okay?" Aurora said as she zipped Hila into a light floral jacket. Hila grinned, clutching her favorite plush bunny. "Yes, Mommy." The garden was nearly empty, just the faint sound of water trickling from the fountain in the koi pond. Aurora settled onto a shaded bench with her tablet, her eyes darting between her design notes and her daughter's movements. Hila was chasing a butterfly, her laughter echoing softly against the garden walls. Aurora let herself relax until she heard footsteps approaching. She looked up. Liam Knight. He wasn't looking at her. Thank God. But walking slowly along the paved path, phone in hand, wearing dark trousers and an open-collared white shirt that caught the fading light. He was deep in conversation, his voice steady but softer than the one she remembered from their fights. Aurora's chest tightened. She quickly shifted her position so a tall hedge partially blocked his view of her bench. But it didn't block Isla. The little girl had abandoned the butterfly to investigate the koi pond. Liam noticed her, his steps slowing. For a moment he just watched her, her small frame leaning forward with curious eyes, her curls bouncing as she pointed at the orange and white fish gliding beneath the water's surface. Then he said something into his phone and slipped it into his pocket. He crouched down a short distance away, his tone unexpectedly warm. "Careful there, they might splash you." Isla turned toward him with a smile so bright it seemed to catch him off guard. "They're pretty," she said matter-of-factly. "They are," he agreed. "Do you come here a lot?" Aurora's heart pounded. She considered calling Isla over immediately, but she didn't want to raise suspicion by seeming panicked. "Sometimes," Isla said. "Mommy says I have to be careful near the water." "She's right," Liam said with a faint smile. "Mothers usually are." Aurora stood then, walking toward them with measured steps, her expression calm, even though her pulse felt like a drum in her ears. "There you are," she said to Isla. "Time to go." Isla pouted. "But I was talking to—" "Now, sweetheart." Aurora's tone was gentle but firm. She didn't look directly at Liam, only gave him the briefest nod, one that could pass as polite acknowledgement to a stranger. Then she took Isla's hand and led her away. Behind her, she felt his gaze linger. Not in recognition, she was certain of that, but in curiosity. And that was dangerous enough. Aurora had been staring at the email for 5 full minutes, her coffee growing cold beside her. Subject, Palmetto Hotel Expansion, Initial Consultation. From Samuel the Night Group, location, Executive Boardroom, Night Tower, Victoria Island. Date, Thursday, 10 a.m. There it was, in black and white. No ambiguity. No way to delegate it to one of her senior designers. The meeting was set, and it was in Liam's headquarters. She pushed the laptop away and rubbed her temples. This was exactly what she'd been trying to avoid, a face-to-face meeting. But walking away from the Palmetto contract would be more than just losing a project. It would be shutting the door on a career-defining opportunity. She closed her eyes for a moment, recalling his voice in the garden 2 days ago, warm when he'd spoken to Isla. He hadn't known who she was. He hadn't looked at her like the man who once broke her. And that was almost worse, because it reminded her how easily he could disarm people when he wanted to. "Mommy." Aurora opened her eyes to see Isla peering around the doorframe, a smear of peanut butter on her cheek. "Yes, love? Are you okay? You're making your thinking face." Aurora forced a smile. "Just work, baby." Isla nodded solemnly, clutching her bunny. "Work is important, but not more important than me." Aurora's heart twisted. "Never," she whispered, pulling her daughter into a hug. Thursday came faster than she wanted. The night tower was an imposing sheet of glass and steel against the Victoria Island skyline, its mirrored surface catching the morning sun. The moment Aurora stepped through the revolving doors, she felt the shift, the hush of power, the scent of polished wood and expensive cologne, the subtle deference of the staff who moved like clockwork. Samuel, the assistant she'd spoken with, greeted her in the lobby. "Miss Carter, thank you for coming. Mr. Knight will join us shortly." She almost told him not to use her last name, as if it might trigger recognition sooner. But that was ridiculous. Knight was a common enough surname in business circles. And besides, Liam wouldn't have been the one to prepare the client briefing. The boardroom was on the top floor, its wall of glass offering a sweeping view of the lagoon. Aurora set her portfolio on the table, deliberately choosing the seat farthest from the head of the table. Samuel began with introductions to the rest of the project team, running through logistics and budgets. She kept her focus on the architectural renderings in front of her, mentally rehearsing her talking points. And then the door opened. Liam stepped in. For the first time in 4 years, Aurora saw him in his full element, dark tailored suit, watch gleaming at his wrist, that unshakable air of command settling over the room the moment he crossed the threshold. He scanned the table, his gaze moving from Samuel to the documents, then landing on her. He stopped mid-step. "Aurora?" His voice was low, startled. She met his eyes, calm mask firmly in place. "Mr. Knight." Samuel looked between them, clearly sensing the shift in atmosphere but saying nothing. Liam's expression was unreadable. "You're the creative director of Aurora Luxe Interiors?" "I am." Her tone was steady. "And I understand you're the client." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise? Yes, but also something else. Regret? Curiosity? He didn't press. Not yet. Instead, he took the head seat and gestured for the meeting to continue. But Aurora could feel his gaze on her every time she spoke, measuring, assessing, peeling back layers she didn't want exposed. She kept her back straight, her voice clear, her focus on the work. But beneath the table, her hands curled into fists. Because this was no longer just a project, it was a battlefield. And whether she liked it or not, Liam had just stepped back into her world. The driver eased the car into the private drop-off at the Knight Tower, but the flashing of camera lights still caught Aurora off guard. She hadn't realized anyone was watching when she and Liam walked out of the building together after the meeting. Now, 2 hours later, she was back in her penthouse scrolling through her phone in disbelief. Billionaire Liam Knight spotted with mystery woman business or pleasure. The article was splashed across one of Lagos's most notorious society blogs. There was a grainy photo of them stepping onto the curb, Liam mid-sentence, Aurora listening with a polite smile. To the outside world, it looked almost intimate. She set the phone down, jaw tight. This was exactly what she didn't want. Public attention that might put her anywhere near Liam's orbit again. And yet, even before the article, her mind had been dragged back to the past the moment she saw him in that boardroom. 4 years ago, they had been the city's golden couple. She was a rising interior designer. He was the charismatic heir to a hotel and real estate empire. Their engagement had been celebrated in business magazines and whispered about in high-end salons. Aurora had loved him fiercely, and she thought he loved her back. Until the cracks began to show. It started with long business trips, late-night calls he wouldn't explain, and a new coldness in his tone whenever she asked too many questions. At first, she blamed the pressure of the wedding planning and his growing company. But then came the night everything fell apart. She had been at their Ikoyi mansion, finalizing the guest list, when a rumor reached her, one she tried to dismiss until she saw the photos herself. Liam at a gala in Johannesburg with a glamorous socialite, his hand on her lower back, the woman leaning into him like they were more than acquaintances. When she confronted him, he didn't deny being there with the woman, but he insisted it was business. "Business doesn't look like that," Aurora had said, her voice shaking. He'd met her gaze with that infuriating calm of his. "You're overreacting, Aurora, and if you're going to keep doubting me, maybe we shouldn't be doing this at all." She had been 1 month pregnant at the time, though he didn't know it. She had planned to tell him that night. But the way he looked at her, as though she were a burden he no longer wanted to carry, stole the words from her mouth. The next morning, his lawyer sent her divorce papers. No conversation, no explanation. Just an abrupt end to everything they'd built. She left his house the same day, suitcase in hand, her heart hollow, and she decided in that moment that he would never know about the child growing inside her. A soft knock on the bedroom door pulled her from the memory. "Mommy!" Isla peeked in, clutching her bunny. "Yes, love. Can we go to the garden later?" Aurora hesitated, Liam's warm tone in the garden still fresh in her mind from a few days ago. "Not today, baby. Mommy has some work to finish." Isla nodded and patted away. Aurora turned back to her phone, scrolling past the blog article again. She could already hear the whispers among her old acquaintances, speculation about whether she and Liam were back in touch. They didn't know, and they never would, what had truly broken them. But Liam knew she was back in his space now, and if he was anything like the man she'd married, he wouldn't let that go without a fight. The rain started just after sunset. Slow at first, a gentle tapping on the glass. By 8 o'clock, it had turned into a full tropical downpour, the kind that blurred the city lights and wrapped Banana Island in a thick, humid haze. Aurora had just tucked Isla into bed when the sudden crack of thunder rattled the penthouse. Seconds later, the lights flickered twice and went out. She exhaled sharply. The building had backup generators, but the silence that followed told her something was wrong. She grabbed her phone and stepped into the living room, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing nothing but darkness and rain-streaked glass. A knock sounded at the door. She froze. It was late, too late for casual visits. "Aurora?" The voice was deep, muffled, but unmistakable. "Liam." She didn't answer immediately, weighing whether to pretend she wasn't home. But then Isla's small voice drifted from the hallway. "Mommy? Who is it?" There was no avoiding it now. Aurora opened the door just enough to see him standing there, a flashlight in one hand, the other resting casually in his pocket. Even in the dim light, he looked annoyingly composed, shirt sleeves rolled up, jaws shadowed, eyes steady. "The generator's out," he said. "Concierge told me the whole floor is affected. They're working on it, but it could be a while. You okay?" "We're fine," she said quickly. "I have candles." He glanced past her into the darkened apartment. "It's safer to wait it out in one place. My place has more emergency lighting. Isla might be less scared there." Aurora stiffened. "She's not scared." As if on cue, another thunderclap boomed. From the hallway came a soft whimper. Liam's brow lifted slightly, not in triumph but in something closer to concern. "Aurora!" She hated that he could still say her name like that. Quiet, measured, just enough to make her hesitate. But this wasn't about him. This was about Isla. 5 minutes later, she was sitting on Liam's leather sofa, a warm throw draped over her shoulders, while Isla sat cross-legged beside her, a cup of hot cocoa in her small hands. Liam had moved into the kitchen, speaking with someone over the phone, probably his building manager, his voice low but calm. Aurora's eyes roamed the apartment. It was exactly what she expected of him. Sleek, expensive, minimalist, the Lagos skyline stretching endlessly beyond the glass. But there were details she didn't remember from their marriage. A framed black and white photo of an old European city, a potted plant in the corner, a crystal decanter set on the sideboard. "You've changed some things," she said when he returned. His gaze flicked to the room before settling back on her. 4 years is a long time." She said nothing. Isla, oblivious to the undercurrent, was busy telling him about the koi pond in the garden. Liam listened, leaning forward slightly. "You like fish, huh?" Isla nodded. "They're pretty. Mommy says I can't touch them." "She's right," he said, smiling faintly. "Smart moms give the best rules." Aurora looked away, her grip tightening on the throw. The easy way he spoke to Isla, it was dangerous, too natural, too close to something he didn't even know was his. An hour later, the power returned, breaking the strange bubble of proximity. Aurora stood quickly. "Thank you for the cocoa. We'll head back." Liam walked them to the door but didn't say goodnight immediately. His gaze lingered on her for a moment, something unspoken passing between them. "Next time there's a storm," he said quietly, "you don't have to wait for me to knock." She held his gaze for half a second before stepping out into the hallway. The door shut behind her with a soft click, but the echo of his words stayed. And in the quiet of her own penthouse, Aurora realized the first crack had appeared in the wall she'd built between them. The week after the storm, Aurora threw herself into work, determined to keep her mind and her heart away from Liam Knight. But avoiding him was impossible when he lived just across the hall. On Wednesday afternoon, she was in the garden with Isla. The air was warm but not oppressive, the late-day sun filtering through the palms. Isla was crouched near the koi pond again, her laughter spilling into the air as she tried to name each fish. Aurora had been careful to choose times when Liam was likely at work or in meetings, but today she heard the unmistakable click of polished shoes on the stone path. "Hello again," Liam said from behind her. Aurora stiffened before turning slightly, keeping her tone neutral. "You seem to enjoy surprising people." His mouth curved faintly. "Not my intention." Isla looked up, her small face breaking into a smile. "Hi." Liam crouched down near the pond, his suit jacket stretching across his broad shoulders. "Catch any new names for them today?" "Yes," Isla said proudly. "This one is Goldie, and that one is Stripey." Liam chuckled. "Good names." It was then Aurora noticed the way he was looking at Isla, not in the casual, indulgent way strangers look at children, but with a kind of quiet curiosity. His gaze lingered on her hazel green eyes, the exact shade Aurora had always loved, the same shade he saw in his own mirror every morning. "How old are you?" he asked lightly. 3, Isla replied, holding up 3 fingers. "I'll be 4 in May." Aurora's pulse stumbled. She could almost feel the calculations starting behind his eyes. Liam's brow furrowed ever so slightly, and then he smiled again, standing smoothly. "That's a fun age." Aurora cleared her throat. "We should get going, Isla. You still have homework to finish." Isla groaned but obeyed. As they walked away, Aurora felt the weight of Liam's gaze following them. That evening, in his own penthouse, Liam poured himself a drink, but barely touched it. He couldn't get the image of the little girl out of his head, the tilt of her chin, the spark in her eyes, even the stubborn set of her mouth when she didn't want to leave. 3 years old, nearly 4 in May. The math tugged at something in him, something he didn't want to examine too closely. Samuel's voice from earlier in the week echoed in his mind. "Miss Carter is an exceptional designer. You'll be impressed." Aurora Carter, his ex-wife. He had never once heard her mention a child during their brief, intense interactions since she'd moved in. But now he wondered. And once Liam Knight wondered about something, he rarely stopped until he had answers. Aurora had just finished putting Isla to bed when the knock came, firm, deliberate, the kind that wasn't going away until she answered. She froze in the hallway, the soft hum of the white noise machine in Isla's room filling the silence. She already knew who it was. Her chest tightened. She considered pretending she wasn't home, but another knock came, louder this time. With a steadying breath, she opened the door. Liam stood there, leaning one hand against the doorframe. His suit jacket was gone, his white shirt rolled at the sleeves, and there was a tension in his eyes that she hadn't seen in years. Not the icy calm he used in business, but something more raw. "We need to talk," he said. Aurora's grip on the door tightened. "It's late." "I'm not leaving without answers." His voice was low, almost dangerous, but threaded with something else. "Hurt." She swallowed. "About what?" "About her," he said. "The little girl you've been keeping from me." The words landed like a slap. Aurora stepped out into the hallway, pulling the door nearly closed behind her. "Keep your voice down. She's asleep." He searched her face for a long moment, as if trying to piece her together. "She's mine, isn't she?" Her heart thudded painfully. For years she had prepared for this moment, what she would say, how she would defend her choice. But now that it was here, the words tangled in her throat. "Liam," she began. His jaw clenched. "Don't lie to me, Aurora. I see it. I see myself every time I look at her. The eyes, the smile, even the way she tilts her head when she's curious." Aurora looked away, her nails biting into her palm. "Yes," she said finally. the word barely audible. She's yours. Silence stretched between them. Liam exhaled slowly, but it wasn't relief, it was something heavier. You kept my child from me for almost 4 years. Her head snapped up. Don't you dare make yourself the victim here. His gaze hardened. I had a right to know. And I had a right to protect her, she shot back. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Protect her from what? From me. Yes. The word came out sharper than she intended. From the man who ended our marriage without a second thought. From the man who cared more about closing a deal than asking his wife why she'd been crying herself to sleep for weeks. From the man who, when I begged for honesty, looked me in the eye and made me feel like I was losing my mind. Liam's expression faltered just slightly. Aurora's voice shook, but she didn't stop. Do you remember Johannesburg? Do you remember the photos? You at a gala with another woman, her hand on your arm like she belonged there? I saw the way you looked at her, Liam, and when I asked you about it, you didn't deny it. You just told me I was overreacting. You didn't fight for me. You didn't even try. That wasn't, he began, but she cut him off. It wasn't what? What I saw? What the whole city saw? You made me feel small, disposable, like our marriage was just something you could discard when it got inconvenient. He was silent, his gaze locked on hers, but she saw the muscle in his jaw twitch. I was 1 month pregnant, she said quietly. The words hit him like a blow. He took a step back, as if the space between them might help him absorb it. You were? Yes. And that night I was going to tell you. I was ready to put aside my pride and just tell you. But then your lawyer sent me divorce papers the next morning. No conversation, no explanation, just an envelope on the table and a note that said, "It's better this way." Liam's breath caught. Aurora's voice broke, but she forced the words out. Do you know what it feels like to have the man you love cut you out of his life in a single stroke? To be told without being told that you weren't worth the truth? His eyes were darker now, not with anger, but with something closer to regret. Aurora, I thought I was doing the right thing. She laughed bitterly. By ending everything? I was protecting you, he said, and his voice had the rough edge of someone confessing something they'd kept buried. Johannesburg wasn't what you think. That woman, she wasn't a fling. She was a problem. Someone I'd done business with before I met you, and she was threatening to go public with things that could have destroyed my company. I needed her silent, and the gala was leverage. But she made it clear she would use you against me if you stayed in my life. He broke off, running a hand through his hair. I thought if I cut you loose, she wouldn't have a reason to hurt you. Aurora stared at him, disbelief and hurt warring inside her. So you decided for me. You decided my place was out of your life. You didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. I thought I was sparing you, he said, quieter now. But I see now that I just broke you instead. Her throat ached. You didn't just break me, Liam. You broke us. And in the process, you lost 4 years of your daughter's life. First words, first steps, birthdays, all gone because you thought you knew best. He looked away, his jaw tight, the weight of her words hanging between them. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick. I want to know her. Aurora's instinct was to say no, to slam the door and lock it. But the image of Isla in the garden, smiling up at him, without fear, made her pause. This isn't about what you want, she said finally. It's about what's best for her. And I don't trust you yet. Not with her heart, and not with mine. I'll earn it, he said, meeting her gaze with a steadiness that made her chest tighten. Whatever it takes, Aurora, I will earn it. She shook her head, stepping back toward her door. We'll see. As the door closed between them, Aurora leaned against it, her hands trembling. She had told herself for years that if this moment ever came, she'd feel nothing but anger. But now, with the truth out and the past laid bare, she felt something far more dangerous. Hope. And hope, she knew, was a risk she wasn't sure she could take again. The late afternoon sun poured warm light across the penthouse living room, painting the cream walls in soft gold. Isla sat cross-legged on the rug, humming to herself as she lined up her stuffed animals in perfect rows. Liam sat beside her, pretending to take attendance with a notepad, his deep voice reading out each toy's name as if they were in an important meeting. Aurora stood by the kitchen island, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she hadn't sipped from. She watched them, her chest tight. Over the past months, Liam had become part of their daily rhythm. He knew which cartoon theme song made her daughter giggle, which bedtime story always led to a million questions, and exactly how to braid her curls without pulling too hard. But one thing still hung between them. Isla didn't know. Liam looked up, catching Aurora's gaze. It was the same silent question they'd been exchanging for weeks. When? She set the mug down, her palms damp. Now, she mouthed. His brows lifted slightly, then he gave a small, steady nod. Aurora crossed the room and sat down on the rug beside Isla. Sweetheart, can you pause your game for a minute? Mommy and... She hesitated, then glanced at Liam. And Liam want to talk to you about something important. Isla looked up, her hazel green eyes curious. Am I in trouble? Liam chuckled softly. Not at all, sunshine. Aurora took a breath. You know how families can look different, right? Sometimes kids live with a mommy and daddy. Sometimes just one parent, or with grandparents. But no matter what, they're loved. Isla nodded. Like in my storybook. Aurora's throat tightened. Yes, and you have always had so much love, Isla. But there's something we haven't told you before. She glanced at Liam, her heart hammering. Liam shifted closer, his voice gentle but certain. Isla, do you remember how I told you I like spending time with you? That I care about you a lot? Yes, she said slowly. He smiled, his eyes glistening, in a way Aurora had never seen before. That's because you're not just a special little girl I met. You're my daughter. The words seemed to hang in the air. Isla blinked at him, then at Aurora. You're my daddy? Aurora's voice was barely above a whisper. Yes, baby. Liam is your daddy. Isla's little face scrunched in concentration. So, you're not going anywhere? Liam's voice caught, but he reached out, taking her small hands in his. Never. Not ever. I will always be here for you. For a moment, Isla was still. Then without a word, she climbed into his lap, tucking her head under his chin. Liam's arms came around her instantly, holding her as if he could make up for every missed year in a single embrace. Aurora watched them, tears blurring her vision. Part of her still feared what the future could hold. Liam's world was complex, powerful, sometimes ruthless. But in that moment, seeing her daughter safe in his arms, she felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. Later that night, after Isla was asleep, Liam stood by the balcony doors, looking out over the glittering Lagos skyline. Aurora joined him, the quiet between them, not heavy this time, but almost peaceful. She took it better than I thought, Aurora admitted. Liam glanced at her, his expression soft. She's braver than both of us. Aurora gave a faint smile. Don't make me regret this. His gaze held hers, steady. I won't. For the first time in years, she almost believed him. The rain had started again that evening, a slow, steady rhythm against the balcony glass. Aurora had just finished tidying up the living room when she saw Liam standing there, his tall frame silhouetted against the night-lit skyline of Lagos. He wasn't looking at the view. His head was slightly bowed, his hands in his pockets. She paused in the doorway, sensing something different in him, quieter, heavier. He turned as if he'd felt her there. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then he stepped toward her, his movements unhurried but purposeful. I need to say this, he began, his voice low, rougher than usual. I've been carrying it for years, and if I don't tell you now, I'll never forgive myself. Aurora's pulse quickened. Liam. No, he said gently. Please. Let me finish. He stopped just in front of her, close enough that she could feel the faint heat of his body. I was wrong, Aurora, about everything, about how I ended things, about thinking I knew what was best for you. I told myself I was protecting you, But the truth is, I was protecting myself from being vulnerable, from needing you too much, and I hurt you in the process, deeper than I even understood." His eyes glistened in the dim light, and for the first time she saw no shield there, just regret. "I missed everything," he whispered. "Your pregnancy, Isla's first cry, her first laugh, all the years I can't get back, and I'll carry that for the rest of my life. But if there's even the smallest chance, Bonnier, that you could let me back in, not just as her father, but as the man who loves you, I'll fight for it with everything I have." Her throat tightened, her defenses wavering, all honesty in his voice. "You broke me, Liam," she said softly. "I know," he breathed, "and I'm not asking you to pretend it didn't happen. I'm asking for the chance to help you heal from it, together." Something in the way he said together undid her. She stepped forward almost without thinking, and his hands came up, not to pull her in, but to cup her face gently, his thumbs brushing away the tears she hadn't realized had fallen. When their lips met, it wasn't hurried. It was slow, deep, a meeting of everything they'd been holding back, years of anger, longing, and unspoken love dissolving into the space between them. His kiss was steady, reverent, as if he was memorizing the feel of her all over again. Her hands slid over his chest, feeling the steady thud of his heart beneath her palms. He held her close, one hand at her back, the other tangled in her hair, grounding her in the warmth and strength of him. They moved together toward her bedroom, the rain outside a soft percussion to their steps. When they reached the bed, he paused, searching her eyes as if to ask permission one last time. She answered with a small nod, pulling him down to her. What followed wasn't just passion, it was a reconnection of souls. Every touch was layered with apology, every kiss a silent promise. His hands traced the curves of her, like he was learning her anew, while she let herself feel the safety she had once known in his arms. They spoke little, but in the quiet gasps and murmured names, something shifted, trust, fragile but real, beginning to knit itself back together. When it was over, they lay tangled in the sheets, the rise and fall of their breathing slowly finding the same rhythm. Liam pressed a kiss to her temple, his hand over hers. "I love you, Aurora," he murmured, the words steady, certain, "and I'm never walking away again." This time she didn't doubt him.